The swipe that changed everything. Zoe Martinez stared at her laptop screen, watching the cursor blink mockingly in the empty email inbox. 3 weeks since her last freelance client, and her savings account was performing a slow, painful death spiral. The half-eaten ramen cup beside her keyboard had gone cold hours ago, but she couldn't afford to waste it. "You need to get out there," her best friend Chloe had insisted during their video call earlier. "Download Spark. Everyone's using it. Maybe you'll find someone who can take your mind off your career crisis." Zoe had laughed it off, but now, alone in her cramped Brooklyn studio apartment, the idea didn't seem so ridiculous. She grabbed her phone and downloaded the app, her thumb hovering over the camera icon. Her reflection in the black screen showed tired eyes and messy auburn hair, but she'd always been told she photographed well. She selected her best photos, one from last month's art gallery opening, where she looked sophisticated in a borrowed dress, another candid shot of her laughing at a coffee shop, and a third showing her sketching in Central Park. Her bio was simple: graphic designer who believes good coffee can solve most problems. Looking for someone real in a city full of pretenders. The swiping began. Left, left, left. A parade of gym selfies, cryptocurrency bros, and men posing with fish they'd caught. Then his profile appeared, and her finger froze mid-swipe. Jake Thompson. Dark hair, slightly tousled, warm brown eyes crinkled at the corners from genuine laughter. His photos weren't the typical dating app poses. One showed him behind a vintage camera, another captured him reading in what looked like a cozy bookstore, and the third was him volunteering at what appeared to be a community garden, dirt under. His fingernails and pure joy on his face. His bio read, photographer who finds beauty in forgotten corners. Believer in long conversations over wine and the magic of handwritten letters, looking for someone who sees the world differently. Zoe's heart did something stupid and fluttery. Before she could overthink it, she swiped right. The match notification appeared instantly, making her drop the phone onto her bed. Within minutes, a message popped up. "Your portfolio is incredible. I saw the link in your bio. That series on urban decay transformed into art? Breathtaking. I'd love to photograph. You working sometime, if you're comfortable with that?" Jake. She blinked at the screen. He'd actually looked at her work. Most guys on dating apps barely read past the photos, but Jake had taken time to explore her website and engage with her art meaningfully. Their conversation flowed like vintage. Wine, smooth, intoxicating, and surprisingly deep. Jake asked thoughtful questions about her creative process, shared stories about capturing spontaneous moments in the city, and made her laugh with observations about New York's quirky characters. When he mentioned loving obscure foreign films and hole-in-the-wall bookshops, Zoe felt that dangerous flutter of hope she'd been trying to suppress. "What's your biggest dream?" he asked during their third day of constant messaging. Zoe hesitated before typing, "To have my designs in a major gallery, to prove that commercial art can be just as meaningful as fine art. To document real stories, the kind that matter but get overlooked. Maybe travel the world, capturing moments of genuine human connection." It was nearly midnight when he asked, "Would you like to meet for coffee tomorrow? There's this place in the village that serves the best lavender latte in the city." Zoe stared at the message, her practical side warring with the part of her that hadn't felt this excited about anything in months. She thought about her empty inbox, her dwindling bank account, the string of disappointing dates that had made her swear off romance. But something about Jake felt different. Real, like maybe Chloe had been right about putting herself out there. "I'd love to," she typed back. "Fair warning, though. I judge people harshly based on their coffee choices." "Then I'm doomed. I'm secretly a gas station coffee addict." Zoe laughed out loud in her empty apartment, already planning what to wear. For the first time in weeks, she fell asleep smiling, completely unaware that the man behind Jake Thompson's profile was sitting in a penthouse 30 floors above Manhattan, staring at her messages on a phone worth more than most people's cars. Marcus Sterling had never felt more like himself than when pretending to be someone else entirely. Perfect lies, Marcus Sterling adjusted his worn leather jacket, a costume piece from his new identity, as he walked toward the small cafe in Greenwich Village. 3 months of living as Jake Thompson had taught him to blend into crowds, to move without the weight of expectation that followed his real name everywhere. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd built Sterling Tech from a college dorm room into a billion-dollar empire, revolutionizing cloud computing and data security. Yet here he was, finding more authenticity in a lie than he'd ever found in his actual life. His phone buzzed with another message from his assistant. Board meeting moved to 3 p.m. Victoria's father asking questions about the engagement announcement. Please respond. Marcus silenced the phone. For 2 hours, he could pretend that world didn't exist. Zoe was already waiting when he arrived, sketching in a notebook at a corner table. Sunlight caught the copper highlights in her hair, and she had that focused expression he'd seen in her photos, like she was trying to capture something invisible and make it real. Jake? She looked up, and her smile transformed her entire face. Guilty. As charged. He slid into the seat across from her, genuinely nervous for the first time in years. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. The subway had other plans. The lie came easily now. Marcus owned 3 luxury cars and a private helicopter, but Jake Thompson took public transportation and worried about being late to coffee dates. No worries. I was just sketching the barista. Look. She turned her notebook toward him, revealing a perfect capture of the tattooed woman behind the counter, somehow making the mundane moment look like art. That's incredible, Marcus breathed, and meant it. In his world, people created things to impress investors or capture market share. Zoe created because she couldn't help herself. You see things differently than most people. My mom always said it was a blessing and a curse. Zoe's cheeks flushed pink. I noticed details that don't matter to anyone else. Maybe they matter more than people realize. Their conversation flowed as naturally as their online messages. Zoe told him about growing up in a small Texas town where her artistic ambitions were met with polite confusion. Marcus found himself sharing stories he'd never told anyone, about feeling invisible despite his success, about the pressure to be someone else's version of perfect. Of course, he changed the details. In his version, he was the son of a middle-class family who'd put pressure on him to be a lawyer instead of pursuing photography, close enough to his emotional truth to feel real, different enough to protect his identity. What's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done? Zoe asked, stealing one of his fries. Marcus thought about the real answer, disappearing from his own life, abandoning a company worth $12 billion, walking away from everything he'd built. Instead, he said, probably this. Meeting someone. From a dating app, I'm usually more cautious. Same. My friends practically forced me to download Spark. She paused, studying his face. I'm glad they did. The sincerity in her voice made his chest tight. When was the last time someone had looked at him like that? Like he was worth knowing, not just worth using. His phone vibrated insistently. Victoria's name flashed on the screen, but he declined the call. Important, Zoe asked. Nothing that can't wait. Another lie. Victoria Blackwell, his father's business partner's daughter, had been calling non-stop since he'd vanished. Their engagement was supposed to be announced last month, a merger disguised as romance, combining Sterling Tech with Blackwell Industries to create an unstoppable empire. The thought made him sick. Tell me about your photography, Zoe said, pulling him back to the present. What draws you to it? Marcus had prepared for this question, researching photography techniques and following accounts of actual photographers. But sitting across from Zoe, he found himself speaking from the heart. "I like capturing moments that reveal truth," he said slowly. "People wear so many masks, but sometimes, if you're patient enough, you catch them being genuinely themselves." Zoe's eyes widened slightly. "That's exactly how I feel about design. Like I'm trying to strip away all the unnecessary noise and show what something really is." They spent 4 hours in that cafe, talking about art, dreams, the way cities held secrets in their architecture. Marcus found himself forgetting to check his phone, forgetting about board meetings and stock prices and the weight of expectations. When they finally left, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "I'd like to see you again," Marcus said, as they stood on the sidewalk, suddenly terrified she'd say no. "I was hoping you'd ask." Zoe's smile was radiant. "But next time, let me cook for you. I make a mean pasta carbonara." "You're inviting me to your place?" He tried to keep his voice casual, but the idea of seeing where she lived, how she existed in private moments, felt more intimate than any of the sterile penthouses and hotel suites that made up his real life. "Is that too forward?" "It's perfect." As he watched her walk away, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: hope. For 2 precious hours, he'd been exactly who he wanted to be. No board meetings, no merger discussions, no Victoria's calculating smile reminding him of his obligations. His phone buzzed with a text from his head of security. "Sir, your location has been compromised. Recommend immediate extraction." Marcus deleted the message without reading it fully. Tomorrow he'd deal with the consequences. Tonight, Jake Thompson was going to buy flowers and practice being the kind of man who deserved Zoe Martinez's attention. He had no idea that 3 blocks away, a woman with platinum blonde hair was photographing him through a telephoto lens, her red lips curved in a predatory smile. Part 3. Cracks in the facade. Nina Cross pressed her eye to the telephoto lens, capturing frame after frame of Marcus Sterling walking away from the small Greenwich Village cafe. After 3 months of following dead leads and corporate non-answers, she'd finally found the missing billionaire, and he was living some kind of elaborate double life. "Got you," she whispered, lowering her camera. As the tech journalist for Metropolitan Weekly, Nina had built her reputation on exposing Silicon Valley's darkest secrets. The mysterious disappearance of Sterling Tech's CEO had been her white whale, a story that could launch her career into the stratosphere if she could crack it first. She'd been tracking financial anomalies, following digital breadcrumbs, when she'd stumbled across something unexpected. Marcus Sterling had been using a carefully constructed fake identity, complete with social media accounts, rental agreements, and even a dating profile. Jake Thompson, the ghost of one of America's most powerful men, was hiding in plain sight, playing house with some unknown woman. Nina scrolled through her photos, zooming in on the couple's faces. The woman was pretty in an understated way, not the usual type, who orbited billionaires. There was something genuine about her smile, something that suggested she had no idea who she was really dating. "This is even better than I thought," Nina muttered, already planning her article. The angle was perfect. Tech mogul abandons empire for secret romance, lies to unsuspecting girlfriend, all while billions hang in the balance. She pulled up her laptop and began typing. Marcus Sterling, the enigmatic CEO of Sterling Tech, worth an estimated $12.3 billion, has been living under an assumed identity for the past 3 months. Sources confirm. Meanwhile, across town, Zoe was floating through her tiny apartment, replaying every moment of her coffee date with Jake. She'd gone on enough disappointing dates to recognize the difference. This felt real. The way he'd listened, really listened, when she talked about her work, The way his eyes had lit up when she mentioned obscure art films, the easy silence that had fallen between them as they'd walked through Washington Square Park. She pulled up his Spark profile again, studying his photos with new appreciation. There was something magnetic about him, something that suggested depths she was only beginning to discover. But as she scrolled through his images, a nagging feeling tugged at her consciousness. Something about one of the photos, him volunteering at the community garden, looked familiar. Not familiar like she'd seen him before, but familiar like... Zoe grabbed her laptop and pulled up a reverse image search. It was probably nothing, just paranoia born from too many dating horror stories. But as the results loaded, her blood ran cold. The photo appeared in 3 different places: Jake Thompson's dating profile, a stock photo website, and buried deep in a Getty Images collection labeled Corporate Volunteer Events, Sterling Industries. Sterling Industries. She'd heard that name recently, but where? Her fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up news articles. Sterling Tech, the cloud computing giant. Marcus Sterling, the reclusive CEO who'd vanished 3 months ago, sending stock prices into chaos. And there, in a blurry paparazzi shot from last year's Met Gala, was a face she recognized. Jake Thompson was Marcus Sterling. Zoe's hands shook as she cross-referenced the photos. Same jawline, same eyes, same small scar above his left eyebrow that she'd noticed during coffee. The only differences were the styling. Marcus Sterling in expensive suits with perfectly groomed hair, Jake Thompson in casual clothes with a more relaxed appearance. "Oh my God," she whispered to her empty apartment. The unraveling Victoria Blackwell stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse office, Manhattan glittering beneath her like a kingdom she intended to rule. The private investigator's report lay open on her glass desk, photographs of Marcus scattered across its surface like evidence at a crime scene. 3 months. 3 months he'd been playing house with some nobody while their empire hung in the balance. She picked up one of the photos, Marcus laughing at something the woman said, his face more relaxed than Victoria had ever seen it. The sight made something cold and sharp twist in her chest. Not jealousy, exactly. Victoria had never been foolish enough to mistake their arrangement for love. But possessiveness, certainly. Rage at being made a fool of. Her phone buzzed. The board meeting had ended 20 minutes ago, and Sterling Tech stock had dropped another 3%. Merger talks with Blackwell Industries were stalling without Marcus's presence. Her father was asking uncomfortable questions about when exactly the engagement would be announced. Victoria dialed a familiar number. "It's time," she said when Nina Cross answered. "You have my permission to publish." "Are you sure?" "Once this goes live, I'm sure. But I want to be there when his little girlfriend finds out exactly who she's been sleeping with." 2 hours later, Victoria stood outside Zoe's building in Brooklyn, studying the converted warehouse with barely concealed disdain. This was what Marcus had chosen over her, over everything they'd built together. She didn't knock. The locks on these old buildings were laughably simple to bypass when you had the right connections. Victoria let herself into Zoe's apartment just as the woman was pulling something that smelled like garlic and herbs from the oven. "Perfect timing," Victoria said, making Zoe spin around with a gasp. She took in the scene with satisfaction. The small apartment with its eclectic furniture and artistic touches. The simple dress Zoe wore, the modest dinner clearly prepared for 2. Everything about it screamed ordinary, middle class, forgettable. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" Zoe demanded, clutching a wooden spoon like a weapon. "I'm Victoria Blackwell, Marcus's fiancée." The words hit their target perfectly. Zoe went pale, the spoon clattering to the floor. "That's impossible. Jake isn't real," Victoria interrupted, pulling out her phone to show Zoe the Forbes article that had just gone live. Marcus Sterling, missing billionaire, found living double life with unsuspecting girlfriend. Zoe's eyes scanned the article, her face crumbling as she read. There were photos, her and Marcus at the cafe, walking through Washington Square Park, all taken with a telephoto lens. Her private moments with him exposed to the world, captioned with speculation about her identity and motivations. The journalist was very interested in your story, Victoria continued, examining her perfectly manicured nails. Poor naive girl, seduced by powerful man's lies. It's quite the angle. I never spoke to any journalist, Zoe whispered. You didn't need to. Your social media told the story beautifully, though I must say Marcus certainly has interesting taste when he's slumming. The apartment door opened and Marcus walked, in carrying flowers and wine, his face bright with anticipation that immediately transformed to horror as he took in the scene. Victoria. His voice was deadly quiet. What are you doing here? Cleaning up your mess, darling. Victoria's smile was razor sharp. Did you really think you could disappear forever? Play house with your little artist while Sterling Tech crumbles? Marcus moved protectively toward Zoe, but she stepped back, the movement cutting him deeper than any blade. Zoe, let me explain. Explain what? Zoe's voice broke. That nothing about you is real? That you've been lying to me since the moment we met? My feelings for you are real, Marcus said desperately. Everything else, yes, I lied about who I am, but what I feel, you're engaged. The words came out flat, emotionless. It's an arrangement, a business merger disguised as, it's a binding contract, Victoria interrupted smoothly. One that Marcus signed 6 months ago. The engagement announcement goes live tomorrow morning, with or without his cooperation. Marcus turned on her, fury blazing in his eyes. You can't force me to marry you. I can't, but I can force you to choose. Victoria pulled up another article on her phone, this one about Sterling Tech's plummeting stock prices and the rumors of a hostile takeover. Every day you're gone, the company loses value. Your employees' pensions, their jobs, the technological innovations that could change the world, all of it hangs in the balance while you play pretend with her. Zoe looked between them, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd stumbled into. How many people work for your company? She asked quietly. 47,000, Marcus admitted, and their jobs depend on you coming back? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Victoria said. Marcus has responsibilities. To the company, to our families, to the merger that will create the largest tech conglomerate in history. Playing dress-up with civilians isn't one of them. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Zoe looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and for the first time saw the weight he carried, the burden of being responsible for so many lives and livelihoods. You should go, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Zoe, please. You should go back to your real life, to your fiancé and your company and all those people who need you. Tears started falling, but her voice remained steady. I was just a fantasy, a break from reality, but reality is calling, and it's bigger than whatever this was between us. This isn't over, Marcus said, his eyes never leaving hers. Yes, it is. Victoria's victory was complete, her smile triumphant. The car is waiting downstairs, darling. Time to come home. As they left, Zoe sank to the floor of her small kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of the dinner she'd prepared and the shattered pieces of what she'd thought was love. Her phone buzzed with notifications, reporters wanting comments, friends asking if the articles were true, strangers sliding into her DMs with offers and propositions. She turned off her phone and sat in the gathering darkness, wondering how something that had felt so real could disappear so completely. Outside her window, Manhattan glittered with a million other stories, other dreams being built and broken in the space between sunset and dawn. Part 5. Love versus Legacy. 2 weeks later, Marcus Sterling stood at the altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral, surrounded by New York's elite and watched by millions through live-stream coverage. The wedding of the century, the media called it, a union that would create a tech empire worth over $30 billion. He adjusted his platinum cufflinks, a gift from Victoria's father, and tried not to think about the last time he'd worn a suit. It had been in Zoe's tiny apartment when she'd helped him straighten his tie before a dinner they'd never gotten to eat. The organ music swelled, and Victoria appeared at the cathedral's entrance, resplendent in a custom Vera Wang gown that cost more than most people's houses. She walked toward him with the confidence of a woman who'd orchestrated every detail of this moment, from the prenuptial agreement to the media coverage. Marcus's throat felt like sandpaper. In his jacket pocket, his phone buzzed with the constant notifications he'd been ignoring for days. Congratulations from business associates, interview requests from reporters, and most painfully, silence from the one person whose voice he desperately wanted to hear. He'd tried calling Zoe dozens of times after Victoria dragged him away from her apartment. Every call went straight to voicemail. He'd sent flowers, letters, even gone to her building. But she'd moved out the day after Nina Cross's article went viral. The investigator he'd hired found her eventually. She'd taken a job with a design firm in Portland, 3,000 miles, away from the wreckage of their brief, brilliant connection. The photos showed her boarding a plane with 2 suitcases and a determined expression, leaving no forwarding address. Victoria reached the altar, her smile perfect for the cameras. "You look handsome," she murmured as she took his arm, playing the part of the blushing bride for the watching world. "Let's get this over with," Marcus replied. The ceremony began, all pomp and tradition designed to cement an alliance rather than celebrate love. Marcus spoke his lines mechanically, his mind 3,000 miles away, with a woman who created art from her heart and saw beauty in forgotten corners. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace," the Archbishop intoned. The cathedral fell silent except for the soft whir of cameras. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering Zoe's laugh, the way she'd looked at him like he was worth knowing rather than using. "I do." The voice came from the back of the cathedral, clear and strong. Marcus's eyes snapped open as murmurs rippled through the congregation. Zoe stood in the doorway, not in designer clothes, but in a simple black dress, her auburn hair catching the light from the stained glass windows. "I object," she continued, walking down the aisle with steady steps while security moved to intercept her, not to the marriage necessarily, but to the lie it represents. Victoria's perfect composure cracked slightly. "Security, let her speak," Marcus said, his voice carrying enough authority to stop the guards in their tracks.